Hello, everybody. It's your girl Tisha, your midlife makeover maven, and we're back with Miss Rashonda Dixon, my friend extraordinaire who I've known for years. And you know what's beautiful about a friendship is sometimes when it's not even you don't have to talk to people every day, and you kind of know that there is a kindred
Yeah.
spirit. And it's so funny when you go through something with someone, right?
Mm.
You realize there's like this surface relationship and then there's this real thing going, right? So as you're
Yes.
pushing through that thing, you're like, girl, let's talk about what was really going on at the time.
Let's
So
get
Miss
into it.
Rashonda is an entrepreneur, a corporate queen, a single mother, uh,
Yes.
twice, married and divorced, and in the process of her current midlife makeover. And I'm so excited to talk to her because we have a very similar history. We have similar ambitions. We have a similar story. We've overcome similar things. Um, and, it's one of those things where you just kind of learn that you just play the hand that you've been dealt
Mhm.
and push through. Miss Rashonda, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, thank you for the wonderful introduction. Yes, I am a 46-year-old single mom. Single mom twice over. Had my first son at 19, and I was married around 35. But now I was married for 7 years and divorced with 18-year-old. I am an entrepreneur. I am in corporate America. I'm in the field of project management, and I'm just here to tell my story. Hopefully, it can encourage someone else.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Mr. Shonda, we're going to talk about the fact that you have two boys, very
Yeah.
different in age, and they came
Mhm.
at very different times in life, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about how the difference in where you were in life space has an impact on how you parent now.
Ooh. Well, my first one, I was 19. I didn't know what I was doing. 19, raised in a Southern Baptist household, where it was definitely frowned upon for me to have a baby out of wedlock, and where I even had to go before the church when my grandparents found out that I was pregnant. And they also wanted me to get married to my first son's father. So parenting came from a place of rejection because I already felt the rejection of my family getting pregnant at 19. And then also abandonment because a lot of people kind of turned their back on me. I felt though at the time because I looked place of shame for them. Like I was supposed to be doing all these great things. I was a so-called good girl, the smart girl. And here I go getting pregnant at 19, and they didn't make me feel like it was something to bounce back from. So here I go parenting from that place of rejection and shame with my 19-year-old, and also wanted to make sure that he didn't follow in my footsteps. So I was this super strict mom. And I didn't want people to talk about him like they did me.
So
So
you're really leading from a place of not from a place of strength, right? From a place of protection. And I can relate, growing up with my son. It's unfortunate. I feel like I had to protect him from all the chaos going on in my
mhm,
family before I could even start protecting him from the world.
yes.
So when you go into that space of feeling ashamed of who you are, I did have, some family members that said, no matter what, you're going to be okay. But that was not the overarching theme,
Mm-mm,
as a teen
mm,
mom. And so I went into life feeling less than or that I had to overcome, right? A situation
yes.
that just, that has an impact on your child because it's like,
Hmm.
I need you to get it. You got to get it right. Because if you don't get it right, then all of this would have been for not for
But
me.
nothing. Yes.
Yeah. How did you carry that? I mean, how do you think that showed up in your relationship with your son?
Ooh, it showed up in a lot of places because, well, his father, let me give you a little background about his dad. His dad was a drug dealer.
Oh,
So that added another layer. Yeah. So here I go, this Christian little girl getting pregnant by a drug dealer in this small town. And it was the immediate need for me to make sure my son would not follow follow in the same footsteps as his dad. So I'm carrying that as well. And so I relate the relationship with my son has always been like touch and go sometimes because he didn't get it, so he wanted me to be like the softer moms. And he would tell me that, can you be just a regular mom? And I'm like, what's regular? He was like, can you just be like the moms, of my friend's mom? I said, no, I can't just be baking cookies for you. I'm a single mom. I have to work. I have to do this. You have to do well in school. So I was super hard on him to a point because I didn't want him to face the same level of shame. And also the failures as well. I feel like going into college, I didn't do all the things that I wanted to do because I had to be a mom.
Right, right.
And
So
I didn't want him to go through that.
I think Sarah Jakes would call it soft parenting, right? And
Yes.
so how our children want soft parents. You're like, man, I was providing. Ain't nobody had no time
Yes.
to be soft. I think a perfect description of that is watching The Pursuit of Happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as Will Smith is like trying to run to get to the bus so he can run to the shelter, and little Jaden drops his little action figure in the middle of the floor, and Will Smith's yanking him like, come on. And so he's looking at a bigger picture, right? Little Jaden's looking at, but drop my toy. And
That's good.
Will's
Yes.
like, but we're going to be sleeping outside if you don't get it together, right? That's not something you can explain to a child at that time, right? But it does. It shows up in the relationship. And so oftentimes, as parents, our children have to heal from us. I did a video a little while ago about authoritarian parenting, right? And it was something that I just needed to unpack. So let's talk a little bit about how parenting now for you with your second son is different.
Oh man, it's different because I've decided to put some of the soft parenting in to be more loving, and not jump as quick, to have a little bit more understanding to the situation, because I wanted to make sure that I accepted my faults in parenting with my first son in order to love my second son better. And even though they have two completely different personalities, and sometimes I feel like I need to be like like I was with my first son, with my youngest, because he is much more rambunctious and talkative, and he has this opinion about everything. And now I'm trying to be more open for him to express his feelings and express his thoughts to me, because I'm understanding it's not always good, especially for our Black men, to just be quiet. They need a place where they can be able to express themselves. And also, I'm his first view of a woman. And so if he looks at me all the time as being boom, 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 what is he going to look at other Black women? And so I try to balance the mom being a disciplinary and being more loving as well, and explaining to him in more detail why you're being disciplined. And at times that's hard because I didn't grow up like that. Right. If I had disciplined, my parents just did it. They didn't give me an opportunity to talk. We didn't talk afterwards. They were still looking at me crazy. But if I discipline my youngest, I'm always like, I love you. This is why I did it. Now it's on you to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So with the two boys, how is their relationship, knowing that what I would call maybe a tale of two mothers, right? So your oldest child got one mother, your youngest one has a different mother. Tell me how that relationship is between the three of you, between the young one and the older one.
Okay, so I tell people I have two only children.
Okay.
Yeah. I have two only children. And so my oldest son has definitely pointed out to me, you are harder on me than you are loving. Oh, if I would have done that, you would have done this. So what I've had to do is create a balance between the two and talk to Ricardo separately and apologize. Like, hey, I understand, I was hard on you and these are my whys. Love it doesn't have the same level of whys that you had. No fault to your own, but love it doesn't. So I can't parent love it in the same way. But what I've
Right.
always tried to do with both of them is make sure they had an even playing field. And I know this sounds so crazy. So when I was pregnant with LJ, you have a baby room. You decorated all this type of stuff. I also redecorated my oldest room. If
Okay.
I bought Lovett a toy, I bought the oldest something. If I did something for Ricky, I did something for Lovett. So I made sure that the playing field for both of them were the same. If I took, Ricky on a trip by himself, I would take Lovett somewhere by himself. So to make sure they were never jealous of each other. So
Mhm.
now they have a really good relationship because I still treat them as two only children.
Mhm. That is, you know what? That is very what's the word I'm looking for? That's some intentional parenting, right? Like you're
Yeah,
very self-aware of
yeah.
what that was like. So we're gonna come back to the boys in a second, but you talked about, your first son's father was a drug dealer and now
Yes.
you're divorced. So let's talk about your relationship with men, um, as we all, have it, right?
Yeah.
And kind of let's talk about kind of where you were, thought process. As a teen, sometimes things just happen, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it is like a whole situation, but let's talk about the difference in kind of where you were emotionally and maturity wise with those two men and,
Oh
the
God.
fact that you're no longer with them.
Oh gosh. The first one called a very broken, green, innocent, name it, little girl. Because I wasn't exposed to anything. No fault to my parents. It's just I was just green and broken from childhood trauma. And so
Mhm.
he was able to just come in and capitalize off of that.
Mhm.
And plus I liked what he was doing. I accepted. I liked he was showing me something that I had never experienced. I had never gotten my hair done in a beauty salon. I had never gotten my eyebrows arched. I had never gotten my nails done. He did all that.
Mhm.
So he was showing me attention that I had never gotten before. I had little boyfriends in high school, but I was always that girl that the boys had to stay away from because of my grandfather. So as
Mhm.
soon as I get to college, I'm like, what a boys at? What a boys at? It was just different because no one ever told me I was pretty growing up. But here I go stepping into a college campus and they're like, oh yeah, hey, sweet chocolate. I'm like, me? Wait, no, you talking to me? And I didn't have a sense of self.
Mhm.
I didn't know what I liked, what I didn't like, or who I was. And I didn't have any standards. Yes, I was raised in the church, but no one ever told me this is how a man is supposed to treat you. What was given to me is this is how a woman is supposed to be, but not how a man is supposed to treat you. These are your standards, how you're supposed to view yourself.
Wow, that's very interesting because as you look back, right? You accept what you've seen as acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's one of those conversations where you got to figure out who you are on your own
Yes.
rather than, the guidance, and oftentimes, we're in a situation where we've got to overcome all kinds of stuff to even be
Mm-hmm.
okay with ourselves at that point.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's how it was with
The first one.
your first one, right?
Yes.
Tell me about what had changed or how you grew or what was different like when you got married. Now, as your divorce, was that your first marriage at
Yes, that was my
35?
first marriage. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's at 30. That's my first one. This is what's crazy, not too much.
Okay.
Because he still
Wow. Wait.
married a broken woman.
Wow.
He still married a broken woman.
Okay.
Because I stepped into my ideal of marriage wanting what my grandparents had. I was like,
Okay.
okay, the very traditional way of thinking. My grandfather was the head. My grandmother was submissive. My grandfather paid all the bills. Even though my grandmother worked as a school teacher, she was very well taken care of. So I stepped into the marriage with the false idea of this is what it's supposed to be like, not getting a better understanding of who he was and even who I was.
So you would say that you stepped in what you thought was a situation rather than leaning into character, like that
Mm,
person's character.
I would say not even stepping into a situation. I tried to create something, you
Okay.
know, because the foundation wasn't there. His
Okay.
background was totally different than mine
Okay.
as far as how he viewed a marriage is supposed to be.
Okay.
And I'm coming in with my trauma. I'm coming in with my brokenness, not having healed, expecting for this man to start the process of healing me because I'm thinking that's what my grandfather did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you
it,
feel any pressure at 35? I know many of us do. Um,
ooh, girl,
you know where
yes.
I'm going. Like, you better get married. What's
Yes.
wrong with you? You know, what's wrong with
Those
you
looks
as
are
a
not
man?
going to last forever.
Yeah.
Don't you
Yeah.
want to give Ricky a little brother or sister? Who's going to want you? You're getting
Oh,
older.
so you're
Yes,
going into this situation with a
yes.
feeling like I better take what I can get because I already don't feel great about myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting some family pressure to take or accept, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, you don't even know what questions to ask, to see if you're even on the
Oh,
same page.
age. And then I'm sitting up here wondering, oh my gosh, why isn't life going the way I thought? Why am I not having my Cinderella moment when I haven't done my Cinderella healing? You
Ah.
know, I haven't done the work.
Did you know
It's
what the work was?
no,
Okay.
because I'm
Okay.
thinking you just jump up and get married. You just good. Everything is gonna be all right, and society is going to accept me now because it was harder carrying the torch as a single mother than it is as a married one. Because I threw my ex-husband around like he was a coat. Like, oh, my husband this, my husband that. I
So
no
it was
longer
the
wanted to wear that coat of being a single mom.
so it was the trophy. Like I got a
Yes,
husband, right?
I have a
Regardless
husband
of
now.
let me see if our life is gonna be okay. I just got me a
I got
husband.
a husband. I'm in a different club now. I get invited to the sister wives club. I'm in a different, at church, you moving a little bit different when you say, oh, let me go get my husband.
I'm making light, like I'm tickled by this conversation because I felt the same. I felt the same. I got married at 36, right? And I was like, what's your idea of marriage? He said, I think marriage is great. And that was it for me. You just have to ask any more questions. It didn't matter that he'd been married multiple times. It didn't matter that,
Mm.
he had bitter divorces. None of this stuff mattered. I was like, oh, you want to get married? Oh, okay.
Well,
Let's
this my husband. This my husband. Girl, I carried that
get
man around.
I
Yes.
remember a family member, I said to them, I was like, man, you were educated, you had your job, you was doing your doggone thing. Why did you marry them? And I remember her saying, because I needed that Mrs. in front of my name for people to take me serious.
You
And I
do.
was like,
And
wow.
that is real. And that is real.
Right.
The fight is completely different because I've seen both sides. And when I would tell my ex-husband to come with me somewhere, the approach would be different than when I was by myself.
Wow. So,
That's why
ladies,
I stayed married so long. Like I didn't want to
woo,
go back to
so
the other side.
so the idea of marriage was really kind of more important than the structure and the
There it
marriage
is.
and actual. It's oh.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, so ladies, I know because we both talking about the same thing. I know I ain't telling nobody to get divorced, but I am saying that many of us have gotten married under those same pretenses,
Mm-hmm.
and just examine it. Just examine if that is your truth. So, with that being said, knowing how powerful and strong you felt as a married woman, what was the catalyst for you choosing to no longer be married?
Honey, I started losing all my edges. Edges was gone.
Wait a minute. Now, I know what that means. You're going to have to explain to the audience what that means.
Edges gone. Didn't have no hair. This
No.
man had me. Okay, so that's my thing. That's my thing. I have my edges back. Then that's not going to stress me out because I have my edges back.
Okay.
Um, so he he had me so stressed out. Um, I honestly thought I was losing my mind and it wasn't anything about cheating. Ours were financial because
Really?
he came
Okay.
from the Huxtables and I came from the Beverly Hillbillies. So, just to be completely
Not the
transparent.
Beverly Hillbillies. Oh
Oh
my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, yeah. We country. We had hard times food. My
Okay.
grandfather had a special place in our pantry where he would stockpile food, and he'd go, "Don't touch those hard times." And we were like, "When the hard times coming?"
That food
Like,
expired now.
yes, when the hard times coming, or you save, save, save. My grandmother is so fine now. She's 93 and my
Uh-huh.
grandfather passed over ooh, 10 years ago. And homegirl's still living off of his investments.
Okay. Okay.
She's doing, so that's how I was raised in that manner. And here
So you
goes,
had a difference in values, right? So how
yes.
did that show up in your marriage?
Whew. We never would sit down and talk about money.
Okay.
He came from a mentality where we just come up with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or communication was off. He responded better. And this is going to sound so crazy to me raising my voice because his mother was a screamer. He
Mm-hmm.
grew up seeing his mom scream at his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he responded to. In my house, I didn't even hear my grandmother raise her voice.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just different levels of communication, different ways how we saw money. How we viewed with raising our children was a little bit different. He was a great stepfather, but when it came to my little one, just a little bit different. But definitely money was the cause of us, how we both viewed money
Okay.
and how he looked at working for money. He's
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur at heart. And so he didn't quite believe in the 9 to 5. I believe in the 9 to 5, the entrepreneur. I believe in all of that. And sometimes, in order to have your plan A, your vision that God is giving you, you have to have B, C, and D to build up that foundation so A can be stronger. So he didn't necessarily look at that in that manner. So money that should have been going toward the house was going, toward being an entrepreneur. So those edges was just
Nick,
leaving me.
it's interesting. Like, the entrepreneurship journey is hard. Like, I'm one
Yes.
of those, and I get it. And I kind of think a little like it's going to show up. The difference, however, maybe for me is that, I operate from a baseline. Like, this is the baseline, and everything above
Mm-hmm.
that, we can just kind of, play around a little bit. So I totally get that. But because the two of you maybe didn't have a foundation on or an agreement on this is what the foundation looks like, this is
Yes.
what's good for my comfort, this is what's good for your comfort, and this is how we're going to build and have a conversation, I'm sure there were money fights along the way.
Yes. There were a lot of money fights. A lot of them. a lot of them. Yes.
All right. So how do you balance, being a corporate queen, with being a single mom and also being an entrepreneur? Like, how do you work that? And ultimately, like, how do you see those things feeding each other? Because now as a single mom, you're solely responsible for everything. And how does that work?
I have to say really organized and I have to trust myself.
Okay.
This journey in my faith and in trusting myself to get it done. And I also believe in self-care as well. And let me add another and. I believe in letting things go
Okay.
because in order for me to be a great mom, to be great at my job, I can't take on everything.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things I might go, you know what? Not today. I'll
Mm-hmm.
get to it when I can. I
One of the things,
outsource. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No,
No, I
one of
just
the
said I
things
outsource.
that You get some help, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I have appreciated about you in our conversation is that you have been able to separate, your ex-husband's role as a father versus his role as your then husband.
Oh yeah.
And like, how do you, because there's some people who can't separate. If you're not good at this, you're not good at that. So as a woman, having gone through a divorce and, being a single mom, like how do you balance or how do you reconcile? He can be very good at one and not so great at the
Mm-hmm.
other. How did you come to that conclusion?
Because when I start looking at myself, I'm not good at everything. At
Okay.
times I failed as a wife. At times I failed as a mother. So we all go through our season,
Mm-hmm.
but since we separated, he can be a great father. Now it's still kind of rocky, but I believe in him and being a great father. And also maybe a little bit selfish on me, for me, I want my time. When if you are great being a father, that means you're going to take your son with you and you can take him with your girlfriend. As long as she's not crazy, I am good because I
Uh-huh.
want my time. That's part of my self-care.
Yeah,
I'm doing my job over here. How about you get your son? Yeah, pick him up. That's okay.
I love it. I
And
love
so
it.
it's always a little bit of selfishness, not just for my little one, but also for me because I need the break.
Was there a particular incident or was there just a series of things that like helped you or made you know for sure that the marriage itself was not going to work? Was there like this day of discuss, this is it? Or were there things that just kind of happened along the way?
It was things that happened along the way, but it was one particular day when he hadn't helped me with anything financially for the month. And I saw this Black man go in the refrigerator and pour a tall glass of orange juice. And I said, uh-uh, you need, I was so disrespectful. I said, you need to go get a smaller glass and put some ice in it and then pour you some orange juice. Looked at me, I said, or you can get some water.
Wow. So at that point, you really stopped seeing him as your husband and you started seeing him as what?
A child.
Wow. Okay.
Lost all disrespect.
Wow.
All respect, not just all respect for him. Yes,
Wow.
it was. I knew because he just looked at me like, "Are you really telling me that I can't have a glass of orange juice?" I was like, "Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. These are your options," and took the glass and started fixing a smaller glass.
This is not funny, right? But it's funny in how you're telling the story. And the reason why I say that is, respect is like a big deal. Do
Yes.
you think that had there been communication maybe between you that it maybe wouldn't have gotten that far? Or do you just think that your values were so far apart?
I think if he would have gotten a job, just to be honest, if he would have gotten a job, because the bear, and then that's what's messed up for me at that time, but all I wanted was the bare minimum. So back
Okay.
then, I would have accepted just go get a job. Just go get a job so I can keep my family. Because
Mm-hmm.
I would have stayed with him until my baby turned 18.
Okay.
That was my plan in my head. I'm going to sit down until my baby turns 18 because my youngest son needs his father. If this man just goes to get a job as a janitor, a bus driver, just bring in something. The woman I am today, oh my gosh, I need communication, security, stability. It's so many different things that I need from a man that I was not requiring before.
Would you date another entrepreneur?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Really? So it's not,
Yeah.
I asked you that question for this very reason, because I want some clarity. It's not the fact that he was an entrepreneur. What was
Yes.
the fact?
It was the fact that he didn't understand the hustle. He
Okay.
didn't understand the hustle in maintaining a family and being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you have to be able to balance that.
So we've talked about, hey, I wore, I was a wife like a badge of honor. And then you finally was like, what was the personal journey that you went through to decide? Because you'd already had shame with being a single mom.
Mhm.
We already knew that this was kind of part of your journey. The thought of being single again at that time, how old was your older son?
Ooh, Ricky was like 20. No, I divorced him. He's starting Juilliard. He was like 18, 19.
Okay, so literally that is the time that you would have been an empty nester. And you just
Yes.
said, kind of despite that, I'm gonna go on over here and do that. Talk to me about the process where you basically have said, we've seen the movie I Can Do Bad All by Myself, but we also know that there was some emotion and shame that came behind that. So how did you reconcile all of those feelings?
Oh my gosh. Even though I divorced him in 2018, I didn't stop dealing with him because I did not want to be back out there.
I'm glad you brought that up. You want to
Yeah.
talk about it?
Oh yeah. I told you I would be an open book.
All
I
right.
because I did not want to date. I did not want to drop misses on paper, but I didn't want to drop it in the public view.
So, okay, let's explain this. How did you decide I don't want to be married to you anymore, but I'm still going to deal with you for several years later? Talk to me about that.
Okay. So I didn't want to put back on the code of being a single mother. Again, mind
Okay.
you, I already wore that number of years. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at it. It's better to have someone than no one at all. I
Wow.
know his faults. I know his trauma. I know what he is going to do, what he's not going to do. So let me just overperform. Let me just get a better paying job. Just let me try to overcompensate for him to have him in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back and forth. Oh gosh, we went back and forth for about 4 years.
So I'll have to admit that I am a recovering codependent, and this sounds
Yeah.
a little like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
So was there a process that which there's some like building blocks that you put in place to be able to get back on your own 2 feet? Was there something that happened that kind of helped you work your way out of that situation? Because what I want people to understand is you can decide that you don't want to continue a situation, but
Mhm.
not have the skill set anymore to be able to stop it.
Yes.
So it sounds to me like that might have been a situation where, I want to be done with this, but I don't really know how.
Exactly. I didn't know.
Uh-huh.
Mm-mm. I had to go to
Okay.
therapy. I had to
Okay.
really go to therapy and deal with my childhood trauma, deal
Okay.
with my codependency with him, because we were trauma bonded.
Ah, let's pause here. You said some very important things, and we're
Mhm.
able to talk about this now, whereas a decade ago, we probably could not.
Yeah.
You said therapy and trauma bond. So I'm assuming
Yes.
that therapy helped you identify the fact that you had a trauma bond.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about that. How did that show up?
Mm. It showed up in the fact, well, while I was in therapy or with my relationship with my ex-husband. Which one?
Kind of both. Like what
Okay.
made you identify that this is a trauma bond and how did you process out of that?
Okay. So he didn't really change. He continuously did the same thing over and over again. But the fear of me letting him completely go and being alone overtook the possibility of just leaving him alone completely and what my life could possibly look like without him.
So a little bit of something is better than all of this by myself.
Exactly.
Uh,
Because my trauma rooted at being by myself, the rejection,
Abandonment.
the
Uh-huh.
abandonment, being
Yeah.
by myself.
Uh-huh.
So it was like I'm reliving the little girl, reliving the 19-year-old Shauna. She was steadily in my head. You're going to be by yourself again. You're going to have to do this by yourself. Who's going to want you as a 40-something-year-old woman? Now you have a little boy and an older gay son. Who is going to want you except him? He accepts
Okay.
your trauma. He accepts how you are.
So you're like, hey, and it's interesting, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't know if people know this, but that happened in my first marriage, and we were married for 11 months. But what I realized is I didn't have to be anything different than what I was because he didn't really have a lot of high standards. So I didn't have to perform. Like one of the things that really happened in my upbringing is that I was loved for my performance. Well, when you
Mhm.
get somebody with low standards, you really ain't got to perform that much.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I'm listening to Britney Spears, I Am Woman right now on my
Uh-huh.
audio. And she said that when she was with Kevin Federline, that's kind of how she felt. Like she had these
Mm.
performances she had to do all over the world, but when she was with him, she could just be herself, albeit
Yes.
broken, right?
Yep.
You know, we're in
Yep.
those broken
Yeah.
pieces, right? So that trauma bond feels comfortable,
It
right?
feels
And
so
you
good.
see it like play out on a bunch
Yes.
of different levels. And while I want to judge people, because, you know, shame causes a lot of judgment about other
Hmm.
people, I'm like backing up a little bit with
Hmm.
regards to that. And I think you know, I don't want to speak too much about it, but listening to Whitney Houston talk about she could just be herself with Bobby Brown.
Girl,
You
that's
get
so
it.
true. I
You
get
get it.
it.
Yeah,
Get
you get
it.
it. So you dropped a little bomb up in here, so we're gonna loop back around. And you mentioned that you have a Black male gay child. And
Hmm.
we had a conversation about this several years ago.
And we
And
do. Yeah.
I'm not going to spill the beans about it, right? But let's talk about what that experience has been like for you as a mom, already as a teen mom, already carrying shame in a community that shames people for being not like other people. And I will say
Hmm.
over the past several years, as a community, collective community, we've come a long way. But at the time
Hmm.
you and I were talking, I don't think we were quite there yet.
No.
So chat about that a little bit. How did you feel about it? How did you feel about it initially? Kind of
Hmm.
where were you with that?
It was when I initially found out, it was definitely not a kumbaya moment. I was not the loving mother. I was not accepting of it. I struggled with it
Why?
because again, it was shameful because I grew up in the church and it was like, oh my gosh, here I go again, bringing shame. I brought shame in when I had you. Now this, you know, how are people going to look at me now? How am I going to explain this now? And so I was upset. I was angry with him. I was like, why did you have to choose this?
So did you see it as a failure on your part?
Yes. Hmm.
Really? Okay.
Hmm. I
Tell me
felt like
why.
I didn't place enough male role models in his life. Then I would have the thoughts in my head, but maybe I was too hard on him. And then sometimes I go, maybe I wasn't hard enough on him. Um, I placed it on myself because then I started thinking back, like I didn't let him wear dresses and this and that, but that's the level of ignorance I was on.
Okay.
Like I didn't let him play with dolls. I didn't let him do this. I made sure that he was standing up like a man, shook hands like a man. I was trying to make sure he was around men when he played sports, and he was in different programs and stuff. So I tried. Where did I fail?
So initially you saw it as a moral failing somehow on your part.
Mm-hmm. Me
Wow.
failing as a mother, yes.
How did you reconcile that? What was the process? Besides
Honestly,
that hard conversation we had.
yeah, I've had quite a few hard conversations with my friends. Like, you gave me, you had a hard conversation. I had another hard conversation with a couple of the girlfriends who were very accepting, and my ex-husband was accepting.
Wow.
He
Okay.
did not care. He just said, okay, we
Wow.
just won't have sleepovers. And he just walked away. He just
Wow.
was like, okay, you're
So
gay.
what was your process to acceptance?
Okay. It was a simple prayer to God one day. I asked God to change my heart. And in that, God revealed to me, He was like, I've given you everything you wanted with Ricardo. And I did. I remember writing a list out when I was 19 saying, I don't want my son to be a drug dealer. I don't want him to be a rapist. I don't want him to be a bad person. I've written out all these things to God because people were coming at me saying all these things about Ricardo because of how his father was, about me being pregnant. I was like, God, all these things I don't want. And God reminded me, I gave you each one of those things. So why are you worried about this little piece that has nothing to do with you?
Wow.
That is between me and Ricardo.
Wow.
And your job is to love him. That's it.
Wow.
Because God did. God gave me everything. Ricardo didn't give me any problems in school. Ricardo was an overachiever. He went to Juilliard. He's doing all these great things. He was always being selected for things. He done the Steve Harvey Dreamers Academy. He was with the Frank Ski Kids Foundation, went to Galapagos Islands. He was always being selected. So the favor of God was on his life. And here I go picking out one little thing. God is like, wait a minute. This child's list is long of great attributes. And you worried about this?
That's, go ahead.
No, that is so when it was broken down to me that way, I had to say, I'm sorry, and I repented because of how I judged my son. Because I judged him like people judged me.
Yes, that's where I was going to get to.
Yes.
Because when we're in our shame story, right? Do you feel like maybe accepting him really kind of opened the door for you to accept yourself?
Oh, most definitely. Because it freed me. Yes.
Okay.
Because I loved him so much more. It was like this new love I have for him. I'm like, why am I being held up on these little hiccups? From being dark skinned to having a shape like I had. Why am I being like this toward myself when I'm loving this boy through his freedom, through his journey? Because my son's a dancer, so people automatically assume that he's gay. And so I will be uncomfortable. But then when I stop being uncomfortable and said it proudly, yes, my son is a dancer.
And not just any dancer. Let's go ahead and talk about where your son went to school. Let's talk about
it. He is a Juilliard dancer, Juilliard trained dancer, okay?
That is like the epitome of really being at the top of your gift like that. And I remember being with you through the process of auditions and getting him ready and that trepidation is like, how am I going to afford it? Like all of these things, right? We talked about it, right? But at the end of the day, God made a way. And what I really want to emphasize in this conversation is you being willing to unconditionally love your child made way for you to unconditionally love yourself.
Yes.
And your journey. And so sometimes when we're being hard on ourselves, it is that shame story. And really kind of opening ourselves up and being protective of other people will allow us to give our own selves a break. And what I want to tell you is I commend you for that, because these people don't know where you were in that journey. Like you had your mind made up that this is how it is.
Yes.
And it wasn't from a judgmental perspective. And I remember saying, well, if he can't come to you, where is he going to go?
And I was like, I don't know.
And we need to get to really, the truth of it is, was it your shame as much as you were trying to shield him from the shame that you thought would come from other places?
Ooh, both.
Okay.
Both. The shame from other places and mine.
Wow. So we talked about a long journey here, right? And over the past few years, I can say I've seen the growth. I mean, I was with you. We were both in our shame story. We were both in some foolishness, and we both were just working through this. And we were like, but hey, we're the cream of it. We're educated. We make our own way. We do. What is all this? I would call it noise going on, right? So over the past few years, and you're in your 40s, right? What really has been like the catalyst? What have you been focused on along your healing journey? Was there something that you just thought about? Is there a mantra? Like, what was that for you?
Gosh.
You mentioned therapy.
But girl, let me tell you, it has been accepting my flaws.
Really?
Once
Okay.
I got, yes, once I started saying it's okay to have anxiety, it's okay. This is my anxiety. That triggers me. We're not going to go there. Once I start accepting those things about myself, the other things that it was like the other things that are opening up, like, oh, this is the greatest because I'm no longer hiding the triggers. Oh no, we're not going to go there. That's a boundary for me. Nope, can't cross that line. So my peace is almost widened now because I don't let any of those other things come in. And so my journey in accepting those things, because that's where the shame came from for me, accepting those little triggers, accepting I had a baby at 19 and he was by a drug dealer. I
And
mean,
he's gay. Like
and my
all of
son is
that.
gay,
And we
you
still
know.
good, right? I honestly believe, and that is really, I'm so glad you said that because that is the catalyst for the midlife makeover movement. We have lived in our shame stories for so
Yeah,
long, right? Shame and empathy cannot coexist, right? So
yeah,
this is the space to say, I did it. It happened. This is how I was feeling. This is what I was
yes.
struggling with. Let me go ahead and talk about it so I can help you, get through. We've been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation that we're having is inviting sisters on the journey to say, yep, that happened. Yes, I
Yeah,
felt this. Yes, I did that. Yes, this happened to me. Yes, I was in a dark place. Yes, I had a bad marriage. Yes, I was a teen mom.
yes,
Yes, I did all that and I'm still standing. And so, sis,
yeah.
like, tell yourself a different story. And even if your environment can't support the transition, because it can't, a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
you got to leave, that there are a group of people in the space, if you just open your mouth and say, these are the areas that I'm struggling, or these are the things that I no longer want to hold on to. And you're like, come on over here on this healing journey, right? I know for
Yes.
me, there was one particular person that I know loves me unconditionally. There was nothing I could tell her about my story. And you give them a little bit, and you give them a little bit more, and you give them a little bit more. And you
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, I can tell my whole truth, and you're still gonna love me.
Still gonna
Oh,
love
that
me.
that's that is a gift that that changes everything about
Mm-hmm.
who we are in life. So if you had to have a conversation, which you are, with a woman who has been on this journey,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just stuck. She don't know where to go. She's in a bad situation. She don't even know how to start. What would you say to help her along her healing journey?
Man, it's like I don't even want to be cliche about it, but for me, it was literally just getting up. Like, so serious. It was just getting up to forgive myself, getting up to love myself. The get up was the first step for me. Getting up to love my son. Like I had to go, okay, Shonda, we're gonna get up and do this. We're gonna get up and do this. We're gonna get up and accept myself. I'm gonna get up. I feel about my edges. I'm gonna get up and get my edges back. My sister was had lost them. I'm going to do this. So it was really that get up, and I wanted something more for my life, Tisha. I just knew that was not the end of my story. I just knew that was not the end of my story. I just knew it. I was like, I know God is not doing this to me. And this is the end. He has given me this one child who has gone to Juilliard once he started accepting his journey and accepting who he is. What if I do the same? And stop worrying about this other stuff? Because my son is so focused on his passion, nothing else matters. What if I did that?
Wow.
What if I moved like that? So for me, it was truly about getting up. And I still have to remind myself to simply get up. Get
Mhm.
up out of my emotions, not just physically. Sometimes I have to get up out of my emotions, get out of my past. Don't look back, Shonda. Get up out of that. And I
So
have to
just
tell
having
myself,
some compassion for your humanity.
yes, because I know it's there. I know the trauma is there. I know I have my triggers. I know it. And I accept them. And I love myself through them.
So let's talk a little bit in closing about boundaries and self-care. At this point, do you have any non-negotiables with regard to boundaries and caring for yourself that really kind of help you keep grounded on this healing journey?
Oh my gosh. My non negotiable number one is my peace. I will not negotiate my peace, even with my children. Mm-mm. That's my biggie for me. Um, Number two, my triggers. Because I do have anxiety, um, I'm still working through that. I try to make sure with my triggers that I recognize them early on. And that is a boundary that's been set.
So you're
And
not allowing anybody to trigger you.
I try not to because it
Okay.
happens. I'm still
Right.
human.
Right.
But recognizing,
Okay.
oof, that's a trigger coming. I really don't like that. I either need to remove myself
Mm-hmm.
from this, and if I can't, I need to keep loving myself through to make
Okay.
sure I handle it the right way. Because I can't control how the other person what they do. I can
Right.
only control me.
Got it. And you said three. Is
Uh,
there more?
there's one more. Oh,
You
girl, just
said
slipped my
peace,
mind.
triggers.
Peace.
We talked about self-care.
Yes, self-care is very important to me. Oh my gosh, girl, my self-care is so from big to small. You know, I love to travel. So that's my big self-care. You know, I don't want purses or shoes, anything. I want to travel. I want
I'm
to
with
have an
you.
experience, you
Yeah.
know. So that's my huge self-care. And then my little one, you know what? I might just go have dinner by myself. I'm so serious just to do something that I like. It might be going to Sonic's and go get me a dragon fruit slushy.
Uh-huh.
Today I deserve a dragon fruit slushy because you know what? I had a good day. And I'm not going to get it with my baby. I'm going to go get it first before I pick him up and after school care. And I'm going to enjoy my dragon fruit slushy. So it's like it can go from I'm learning to reward myself in my journey every day. So it's not just going out buying something or my big trip. It could be the smallest things. Even, okay, growing up, it was really big for my grandmother for me not to have loud nails because I know it's crazy because that's what the streetwalkers used to wear. The loud nails and the red lipstick, honey. You know, being from Arkansas, I will go and say, I want me a loud color today. Because I'm special and I want me some ghetto designs.
So
Because
just choosing, allowing yourself to
yes,
choose what's important to you.
yes,
Yeah.
choosing what's
Yeah.
important to me.
It ain't
And
about
it's
the
the little
nails.
things. I do like my love, you know. But I'm just saying those are the little things that it can go from very small to just like my big trips. But I try to love myself in a different way every day. So that's a part of my self-care.
I
And
love it.
don't forget the wine. The wine is always good. That little.
Girl. So here's what I would say to you. I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your openness, and I appreciate you being willing to come with me on this journey so that we can help some other people just move on out of the shame story and really
Yeah,
start setting some boundaries and really just making a decision that we're important. I'm important. You're important. Covering your child because you love them, regardless of what the world says, is important.
mhm.
Leaving toxic relationships are important because you realize at a certain point, you finally said, okay, I might be single, but I ain't doing this no more. So, and really, I think one of the greatest things that I can appreciate about your story is you learning to give yourself some grace and
Yes,
really thinking about how those shame stories started, and then making a decision that you want them to change, even though you didn't know how when you started, but just decided, I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm just going to get up, girl. I'm just going to get up the next day. And life shifts. You had a birthday. And I'm so happy that you chose to spend some time with me after this birthday. And again, I am so grateful to you. And thank you. You want to leave with a parting word? We'll let you close it out, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, Tisha, no, thank you. Just thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my story. You know, I pray that it touches another woman in the way that, you know, it has touched both of us when we have shared our stories. So I love what you're doing and I support you 100%.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
love you, girl.
I love you too. I love you too.